And then let me do one more technical thing and we're gonna get started. Okay. Hello everyone. It's so nice to see you guys. Welcome. I missed you. I don't know if we have some new people here. If you're new, welcome. My name is Xib'alb'a Barrios and I'm the co-founder of the Mayan Wisdom Project and the daughter of Carlos Barrios, the author of the Book of Destiny and one of the most renowned Maya elders in Guatemala as well as in the world. This is a project that I started with my dad in 2020, so 5 years ago, right before his passing. So the project that we have, the Mayan Wisdom Project, is very important to me because it's my way to honor my dad's legacy. He spent more than 45 years as a Maya spiritual leader. He was part of the Council of Elders of Guatemala. And when he passed away, as we had already started this project together, I asked myself, how can I not let like all of his teachings and his wisdom die with him, but how can I keep going? And that's why I do what I do. And that's why we're here today to share about Mayan wisdom, because the wisdom that my dad passed on to me, the wisdom that is passed on to everyone who's part of the oral tradition of the Maya tradition, is incredible, is wisdom that is thousands of years old, and is wisdom that is completely and absolutely life-changing. And it's an honor for me to be here with you guys today and to be able to share that with you. So it's nice to meet you if you're new. And for those of you who've been with us for a while, I missed you guys. It's so nice to see you. It's so nice to be here today. And welcome to today's event, which is going to be a 90-minute event where we're going to discuss a topic that is so important and so profound. And I know every time in the past when we've actually come to the point of discussing this topic, everyone's like, can we learn more about this? Can we talk more about this? And because for years you guys have been asking, can we learn more about this? Can we talk more about this? For the last few months, I've come up with ways that this year we can actually start talking more about it and learning more about it, because those of you who have actually learned about it, I've heard people come to me with incredible stories of how profoundly life-changing this information is. And the topic of today is the topic of Shivalva. And I'm going to actually type that in the chat because it's a difficult word. Shivalva. So you pronounce it like Shivalva. Okay, Shivalva. And that's how you write it, as I just wrote it in the chat. So Shivalva is the Maya underworld, and it is basically all of the life lessons that the Maya left for us since thousands of years ago on how do we overcome the darkness and the difficulty and the pain that we sometimes go through in life so that we can actually come out to the upper world, come out into the light and embrace the light and find balance in our lives. So of course, it's a really important topic because it's so relevant to all of us. We all go through difficult things sometimes in life. We all want to find balance. I assume, right, that we all want to find balance and we all want to be able to embrace the light and heal the effects that the darkness that we've faced in our lives have had and that continue, like the continued effects of that darkness. So that's what we're going to be talking about today from an ancient profound and beautiful perspective. I'm young. These are not my teachings. These are teachings from the Maya oral tradition. I wish I would have come up with it, but I didn't come up with it. I'm just sharing what was shared with me thanks to my dad and my family and the teachers I surround myself with. And it's an honor to be here. But before we get started, I'm going to ask our technical person to share the first slide of the show because, thank you, something that we started doing in all of the events that we host is starting with an invocation. Why? Because in the Maya tradition, an invocation is how you start any spiritual practice, any ritual, any ceremony, anything like that. But what I find so profound about the invocations is not only how you start a Maya fire ceremony, or is not only how you start any of the ancient Maya spiritual practices, it's actually how you start your day. Is something that is present in your life. The purpose of an invocation in the Maya tradition is actually to have it present in your life all the time. The Maya felt that one of the centers of becoming a balanced human being is to experience gratitude. It's like we often forget sometimes that we should be grateful because look at us, guys. We are sitting here. We woke up again. We're still alive, and sometimes we forget that. A beautiful teacher once told me, like, we should learn a lesson or two from the birds because the birds, every single morning when the sun rises, they start singing from joy because a new day has arrived, and they start singing from happiness that a new day has arrived. And we wouldn't be here if it wasn't because of the sun. And I mean that very much literally. If the sun did not exist, if the sun would disappear today, well, you all know what would happen, right? And we would disappear as well. It's not just the sun, though. It's also the moon. It's also the solar system. It's also the plants. If the water would disappear today, we would all die. The plants and the animals would die as well. If the air would disappear today, we would all die within a few minutes, actually. So, in the Maya tradition, gratitude is a center of this tradition. And for that reason, anytime we start anything, such as the conversation we're going to have today, we start by saying thank you to the energies that enable our existence. And so I'm going to be reading this out loud. If you guys want to read along, feel free to do that. If you don't, feel free to do whatever version of this you'd like to do at home. You can just close your eyes and breathe, or you can just look around and try to open your heart and feel gratitude. Whatever you feel called to do is right. There's nothing that you could do that would be wrong. So let me just read this out loud and then we're going to officially get started, okay? So, at this moment, before beginning this conversation, we want to take some time to remember our creators and makers. Alom, Kaholom, Sakol, Bitol, Tepeu, Gukumats, and show them our gratitude for giving us the gift that is life. We say Matiosh Ukushkach, Matiosh Ukushuleu, heart of the sky, heart of the earth. Thank you to the energies of the four directions of the universe, the four elements, the four colors of corn, as well as their guardians. We especially call upon the energy of the word so that all of the words that are shared here can be flourishing and help us connect to one another. We ask this energy that the words that we put out with our voices are caring and of value to the world. Thank you. Okay, muy bien. Entonces, let's get started. So, all right. I'm going to start by giving an introduction to Shivalva. For those of you who've been with us for a while, you probably already know this information, but we have a lot of new people, so we have to start from the beginning, right? So Shivalva, as I mentioned, is known in English as the Maya Underworld. The Maya believe that we as human beings are affected by three different planes of existence or three different dimensions of existence. And I see someone asking if they can drink their cacao. Yes, you can sip on it. You can sip on it throughout the call. You didn't have to bring cacao, by the way, but if you did bring it, you can sip on it throughout the call. Okay, so basically, the Maya believe that as human beings, we're affected by three planes of existence or three different dimensions of existence that are essential to us as human beings. There's a lot of other energies, there's a lot of other things that affect us in life, but these three are basic. Those are called the upper world, the world, and the underworld. We as human beings, we currently exist in the world, right? And what is the world? Is the center, is in the center, is in the middle point between the upper world and the underworld. What do I mean by this? Yeah. Okay. So the upper world in the Maya tradition is a big metaphor for the light, is connected to the heart of the sky, is a metaphor for the cosmos, is a metaphor for the sun, for the moon, for the stars, but it is also the connection to the fire. Especially let's think about the sun, right? And what the sun represents, it represents the light. It represents the day. It represents all of the things that are beautiful, the warmth, the joy, the happy, good, positive experiences that we as human beings have in life. Then there's the world where we exist, and under us, in under the telluric currents of the earth, is a place that is called Shivalva. And is Shivalva is the Maya underworld. The Maya underworld represents the darkness. It represents the night. It represents all of the things that we go through in life sometimes that are difficult because as human beings, we do sometimes go through challenges. We do experience pain. Sometimes people act wrong towards us. Sometimes we act wrong towards people. Sometimes we also act wrong towards ourselves, you know? And so sometimes we go through fear. Sometimes we go through traumatic experiences. We go through all kinds of experiences in life that could be represented by Shivalva and by the darkness. Okay, so that's the most basic way to explain it. Don't worry, we have an hour to get really deep into it and learn why is this important to us as human beings. Before I do that, however, I always start every call here because I know there's a lot of new people and you don't know this by debunking some myths so that you guys understand who the Maya actually are, who they actually were, and why the wisdom that they left us with and the wisdom they continue to develop and continues to develop itself and exist is so profound and so relevant, especially in the modern day world, especially with everything that we're going through right now in the world. So, just for those of you who don't know, the Maya are a set of different nations that was located in a region that is known as Mesoamerica. Mesoamerica consists of the south of Mexico, all of Guatemala, all of Belize, and parts of Honduras and El Salvador. Um, so for thousands and thousands of years, the Maya have resided in the region of Mesoamerica. A big myth and something that I don't like to hear, but we do hear it very often, is that the Maya disappear or that they no longer exist. In Guatemala today, more than 50% of the population is indigenous and has Maya roots. And out of that 50% of the population, not only are they still indigenous by blood, but they still continue to preserve the oral tradition of their ancestry and of their ancestors, and they continue to practice the way of living that, that the Maya had for thousands of years. Of course, it has been a difficult fight to keep this tradition alive, but how difficult the fight to keep it alive has been only makes it even more remarkable and goes to show what incredible warriors the people of this land are, that at the cost of their life, and I mean their literal life, because it has cost many people their literal life, for hundreds of years, they've been fighting to preserve their tradition in the face of oppression that started not only during the invasion that happened when the Spaniards came here around 500 years ago, and that invasion only officially ended 200 years ago. So we've been independent, and I do say it in quotation marks, okay, for 200 years. But in my country, for example, a lot of governments came afterwards, a lot of governments that were trying to oppress the Maya people and their tradition in order to enslave the indigenous people here, because in Guatemala, for a long time, people were slaves so that they could work in the coffee plantations, so that they could work in the food plantations that were owned by companies such as the United Fruit Company, now known as Chiquita Banana. So boycott them, please. Because you don't know their dark history, I recommend you learn it. It's horrible, it's dark, it's crazy. There's actually a really great book about it. It's called Bitter Fruit by, I'll tell you the name of it because I randomly just took a screenshot of it the other day of the book. It's called Bitter Fruit, The Story of the American Coup in Guatemala by Stephen Schlesinger and Stephen Kinzer. Great book if you want to learn about the history of Central America, of the last century. So, anyways, there was all of this slavery, there was all of this oppression, there were all of this political tactics to try to remove the culture and the tradition from the Maya people. But the Maya people still were able to preserve it. And in the 60s, unfortunately, in Guatemala, in Guatemala, and it affected other countries such as El Salvador too. There started a genocide that lasted 30 years and only ended 28 years ago, or now 29 years ago, actually, in 1996. It was a genocide of the indigenous people where people were forbidden from wearing their own traditional attire, speaking their own Maya languages, and practicing any of their practices. And this was less than 30 years ago. So it's incredibly remarkable how this tradition has survived through time and how people were fighting with their lives in order to keep it alive. And for the longest time, the Maya people were not sharing any of the things in their tradition to the outside world. But, well, literally, A, because it got them literally killed, you know? So, of course, it makes sense, you know, like you were being murdered for practicing your own tradition. Of course, you're not going to be sharing it with the world, but also because they didn't think it was the right time. So, the last myth I'll debunk before we actually get started in the topic of Shivalva is um, that you guys probably a lot of you heard from the Maya for the first time in 2012. Do you guys remember the whole end of the world thing? Okay, no one here ever said that, okay? Never, ever. No one ever said that it was the end of the world. It's so annoying. And like the Maya spiritual leaders here in Guatemala, at least were like, can you guys maybe stop saying that we said that because we never said that? Can you like maybe stop? I'm not gonna tell you which channel, but a famous TV channel approached my dad and they wanted to interview him. And they were like, "Can you talk about 2012 and the end of the world?" And he was like, "Yes, I would love to, but I'm gonna tell the truth." And they were like, "Ah, then we're not interested, you know, because apocalypse sells, you know." And he was like, "Well, then I'm not interested. Thank you." So basically, um, you know, 2012 was not the end of the world. There's a long story of how people even came to that in the Western world. However, it was the change of a cycle. It was the end of a 5,200 year cycle and the beginning of a new 5,200 year cycle, a beginning of a new long count period. And that is so incredibly profound that we're living through those times. And the Maya agreed that when that time comes, because of all of the changes that are going to happen in the world, it's okay to start sharing their tradition and their wisdom with the rest of the world because they were able to predict based on how society is going and how everything is going that we're going to be living through really difficult times. Look at what we're doing to the earth. Look at what's happening with the climate. Look at I mean, just look around, right? Like we're not doing that great these days, you know? And so they were able to predict that this was going to happen and this is the time in the world when people are going to need to this wisdom the most because it's wisdom that helps us to find balance within ourselves, to heal ourselves as a community and as a society, to find harmony with the earth and start respecting her a little bit more or a lot more because we're really disrespecting her. And all of that starts with so many of the different teachings that they share. And if I could share in 1 hour all of the different teachings that they share with you, I would, but it wouldn't take 1 hour. It would take 50 years to share them. And we could all die and we still would only know the tip of the iceberg because that's how profound this tradition is, even if we studied it 16 hours a day, every day for the rest of our lives, we still would only know one small portion because it was science, it was medicine, it was architecture, it was spirituality, it was an entire wisdom and tradition that was developed over a period of thousands of years by great teachers and thinkers. So today what we're sharing is a tiny portion of it, but one that I believe will be very helpful to you guys. And if it helps even one of you, then I'll be very happy and my job will be done right. And it's Shivalva, right? And so what is Shivalva? So I already mentioned, okay, we have the upper world, the world, and the underworld, right? The upper world is a metaphor for the light. The underworld, which is known as Shivalva, is a metaphor for the darkness. And we as human beings are living in the world which is supposed to be the center between the light and the darkness. I'm going to start very basic, and as we go, I'll get way more technical. So, mm, let me start with an example I always have loved to give. Think about the light, for starters. When is the light around? In the Maya tradition, well, actually, not just in the Maya tradition, in the world in general, the light is around during the day, right? And think about the day. Let's think about it for a second. What actually happens during the day? Yeah. Well, during the day, we're productive usually, right? Like we get up in the morning, we, I don't know, take a shower, brush our teeth, we make ourselves some breakfast, and we go around and we start running errands. Maybe we go to work, we take care of our children if we have children, That's the time when some of you might go and work out. That's the time where some of you might be working on your projects, on your goals. The day is a beautiful time because in the Maya tradition, what the day represents is the time to take action, right? It's like, what do you want in your life? This is the time when you take action. You want to get healthy, that's when you're cooking, that's when you're exercising. You want to be successful in your career, in your projects, that's when you're putting in the hours, that's when you're working, that's when you're brainstorming. You want to be knowledgeable, that's the time when you're reading, when you're developing yourself, when you're learning. Like the day is the time that gives us the opportunity for taking action in our lives. And in the Maya tradition, for that reason, the day is really sacred. However, think about one more important aspect of the day, and is that during the day, we're usually really busy, right? There's a lot of movement. During the day is when our senses are the most active, is when there's a lot to, like our five senses is like when there's a lot to see, it's when there's a lot to hear, when there's a lot to touch, a lot to taste, a lot to process. We're processing the world around us. We're almost like busy, but also distracted by everything that's outside of us, right? The day represents everything that's outside of us in that sense because we're interacting with everything that's outside of us. We're interacting with other people, we're interacting with our jobs, we're interacting with all these different things. So, as I said, the day is sacred because it's the time for action, but the day is also very noisy. The day is also very distracting. And so, in the Maya tradition, duality is one of the most sacred and important things ever. Like we talk about duality in the Maya tradition all the time. There is day, there is night, there is light, there is dark, there is sun, there is moon, there is feminine, there is masculine, there is good, there is bad, there is there's all of the duality that's important in nature. One thing I always say, and I love to say this because for me, this is what I love about the Maya tradition. This is what makes me so passionate about it and what makes me so passionate about my job is how realistic the Maya are about what life is actually like. That's what I love the most about the Maya tradition is how realistic they are and have always been for thousands of years about what the human experience is actually like. Okay, let me phrase this really well because I don't want to say anything wrong. But maybe something that modern day spirituality, in my personal opinion, okay, in my personal opinion, like the new age spirituality, the modern day spirituality is lacking, is that, how can you say this in English? That, like realism? No, like ser realista, like being realistic. Yeah, okay. Like maybe it's something that is lacking is being realistic about that human experience. The Maya were great observers. They observed the cosmos, they observed the earth, they observed the cycles of literally everything. That's why they have the mathematically most complex calendar of the history of humanity, because they were, dude, when the Europeans were like, I don't know, like peeing on the street and thinking the earth was flat, the Maya already had calendars that measured the cycles of and the transit of all of the different planets of the solar system. And they were aware of the Milky Way, they were aware of the universe, and they were trying to measure the craziest things ever. Maya math is crazy. So they were great observers of the universe and great observers of the earth and of nature, but they were also great observers of us, of human beings, of the human experience. They were great observers of the mind. They really wanted to understand the brain and how it works. They wanted to understand the human body and how it actually works. They wanted to understand human health and how it actually works. They wanted to understand human psychology and how it actually works. And did they pull it off? Yes, they definitely pulled it off. They mastered what being human is actually like and what relationships are actually like and what the human experience is like. So something that I understand is the importance of the light. Believe me, we're gonna end this session today on the note of talking a lot about the light as well. But in the Maya tradition, they believed it was super important to accept duality and to accept that the darkness is also real. And I feel like sometimes in the modern world, we're not being taught how to properly face the darkness. I know so many people who are like, oh, the bad things, just throw them under the rug and just pretend like they're not there. Everything is light, everything is light, everything is fine. But what if it's not, Like, what if it's not fine? We should not push things down, throw them under the rug, and pretend like things are not there. The Maya have this whole science of balance, of how sometimes we have periods of light, moments in which it's actually super important to embrace the light, but also sometimes there are moments when we have to face the darkness. We have to face our own darkness. If that was not important, then nature wouldn't do it too. Duality wouldn't be all over nature. Duality is important for us too. So I told you the day is important, it's productivity, it's light, it's interacting with the world around us. But what's equally important is the darkness, is the night. So think about the night. Gracias, mami. What happens during the night? What happens during the night is the opposite of what happens during the day. While the day is very loud and there's a lot of noise and nature is loud and human beings are loud and everything is moving, the night is very still. The night is very silent. In the modern world, it's like we're trying to change that, right? Like we invented all of these devices and electricity. And my dad and a lot of spiritual leaders have always heard them say the moment we took fire out of the home and put electricity in, society lost a lot of its balance, because we lost our natural rhythm and our natural cycles that are an important part for our health. Because how many people here have actually gone to bed with their TV on? How many people here go to bed with Instagram on their face, moving on from reel to reel, you know what I mean? Until you're like, and then you fall asleep. How many people here are not actually embracing, the silence and the darkness, but we're trying to fill ourselves with distractions, right? And so what the night represents is stillness. What the night represents is darkness. When the night comes around, and imagine, like, I don't know, 200 years ago or something, like imagine a house without actual electricity. Imagine no phones, no laptops, no nothing, just pure silence, pure darkness. And you turn off your little fire, and then you're sitting there and you're like in your bed, actually in the darkness in that moment. And so what happens what happens in that moment when everything is silent and dark, your five senses are no longer that active. Your eyes have nothing to see, your ears have nothing to hear, you have nothing to taste, nothing to smell, nothing to touch, nothing to interact with. And what are your five senses? They're the way in which you perceive the external world. So when they go to sleep, when your five senses go to sleep, what's the only thing that exists in the silence? What's the only thing that exists in the darkness? It's you. Then you're sitting there with yourself, by yourself. And that can be pretty uncomfortable for a lot of people because in modern day society, unfortunately, we have gotten so unused to being with ourselves in the silence and the darkness by ourselves. Sometimes I hear people talk about Shivalva and I hear a lot of mixed things that are simply not true. First, we have like the religious perspective, right? That was imposed to us for the last few hundred years when like books such as the Popol Vuh which is the sacred book of the Maya Quiche people, were translated into Spanish, but given a very Catholic tone. It was actually translated by Fray Francisco Jimenez, a Catholic priest who thought by Catholicizing the book a lot, he's going to make the transition to Christianity easier for the Maya people, like mixing their stories with Catholic stories. And so what he did was call the upper world heaven, maybe, or called the underworld, which is Xib'alb'a, hell. So many times I've heard people refer to Shivalva as hell and to the energies of Shivalva as demons. And it has this really negative connotation, but that's not what it actually is like. It's not hell, it's not demons, it's not negative. Why would the darkness and the silence be hell? Why would the silence and the darkness be bad or negative? Here's the thing, and I've heard a lot of spiritual leaders say this. At some point, we're all afraid of the darkness. What we're afraid of is not the darkness. What we're afraid of is not the silence. What we're afraid of is ourselves. And what does the darkness and the silence show you? It shows you yourself. So if you're afraid of facing yourself, of course you're going to be afraid of the darkness. Of course you're going to be afraid of the silence. But if you've done that job of learning how to deal with your own Shivalva, with the own darkness that's inside of you, then the darkness and the silence are going to only become a place of peace. Because if you're at peace internally, in that moment when you're alone in the silence and the darkness, you're not going to have a panic attack. You're rather going to be like, oh, finally, a little beautiful, relaxing moment where I don't have to think about anything and I can just be with myself. And that's a beautiful thing because that's what the darkness is supposed to actually bring us if we faced our darkness. So now let's get more technical. What is Shivalva according to the Maya? So, I mentioned duality is a part of life. And we're, as human beings, a reflection of everything that's around us according to the Maya tradition. So if nature has duality, we too are going to have duality. We too have positive traits, light, good things inside of ourselves. And we also have some traits that are not that positive if we're honest with ourselves. We also have some parts of us that are not doing that great, that are difficult to face, that are hard to face. So the Maya understood this thousands of years ago. And in their oral tradition, and not only in their oral tradition, but we can see it explained in their ancient codices. It's really sad to think that the majority of them were burnt and very few survived. But yeah, in the existing ones, like in the ancient codices, we can learn about the stories. In the Popol Vuh, which is the sacred book of the Maya Quiche people, we can learn about the stories, and especially in the oral tradition, which is passed on orally from generation to generation. All of these stories have survived. What's really beautiful about the Maya tradition is it's extremely complex, you guys. As I told you, it's extremely scientific, extremely complex. It's it's purely science. Like the Maya were the greatest mathematicians in the history of the world, in my opinion. Other ancient cultures were great mathematicians too, but like Mayan math is like next level, and they were incredible astronomers. They were able to create, as I said, the most mathematically accurate calendar in the history of the world. As neuroscientists, wow, their study of the brain, it changes lives. Like you don't even get it. Like we only in the modern Western world accepted neuroplasticity as a thing in the 70s. The Mayans have been working with neuroplasticity for thousands of years at this point, and much more stuff. A lot of stuff that modern day society hasn't even gotten to discovering or understanding yet. So the Maya really were trying to understand human beings, and they were purely scientific, but they wanted education for their communities. They wanted education for their society. So what did they do? Is they took the most complex concepts about how your brain works, how your emotions work, how medicine works, how your psychology works, and turned it into a beautiful set of stories that could be understood even by a 5-year-old child. So we all grew up hearing those stories since we were kids. My dad would always tell me the stories. And the stories are super therapeutic because you can study them for years and years and years, and you'll keep discovering aspects of it that are life-changing. But they're so simple to understand. And so I'm going to share some of those stories with you today. So one of the story of Shivalva begins. Let's talk about the Popol Vuh. When you're reading the Popol Vuh, and my recommendation is if you are going to read it, the Popol Vuh again, the sacred book of the Maya Quiche people. It tells the history of the creation of humanity according to the Maya. The first few chapters of the Popol Vuh are like the oral tradition, mysticism, mythical, and the last part of the Popol Vuh is historical, and it actually ends in when the Spanish came here. And it's like telling the story of like the invasion, and it's a really cool book. It's a really interesting book, very, very profound. But as I mentioned, be careful when you read it because it's been really badly mistranslated a bunch of times. So you're gonna see a lot of like religious concepts in it, and you'll be confused. You'll be like, what? This reads like the Bible almost. But that's the translations, it's not the actual oral tradition. So just beware of that and watch out for that, but still worth reading it. The best version of it, and this one was told to me by my aunt Lina Barrios, who's been awarded worldwide for her studies of the Popol Vuh, and the woman read the Popol Vuh more than 100 times. According to her, the best version is the one by Sam Colop. It's in Spanish. I cannot really recommend a good version in English, okay? The best one is Dennis Tedlock in English, but it doesn't even begin to compare with the Spanish version of Sam Colop. So when you're reading it, if you do read it, just keep that in mind, please, okay? Keep all the mistranslations in mind. It's even better to first learn the oral tradition and then read the Popol Vuh because then you yourself are going to be able to figure out what's actually right and what's wrong, right? But anyways, I'm just saying that because I know otherwise everyone's going to start asking, where can I read the Popol Vuh? So the idea is that when you start reading the Popol Vuh, first it starts in the first chapter with the beginning of creation, the creation of the earth, the creation of the animals, the creation of everything in existence, the creation of the energies that affect our existence. Eventually, you're moving on through the chapters, and the first time we see Shivalva being mentioned in the Popol Vuh is in chapter 3 of the book with the story of Vukub Kakish. And I'm gonna tell you the story of Vukub Kakish because it's an amazing. Um, Martin, can you take care of that? I don't know what's happening. I don't know if you guys heard that sound, but yeah. Okay. Okay. I'll let Martin take care of it. Okay, so anyways, my point is Vukub Kakish, who is this? Vukub means seven in Maya languages. In a lot of Maya languages, they're all very different. There's many different Maya languages, but Vukub means seven in Quiche, okay? And Kakish means Macau. Macau, I don't know if you've ever seen a Macau. If not, you can Google it. It's that beautiful bird. It's a beautiful bird. It has like red and yellow and green and blue feathers. And it's a beautiful story about the time of humanity when before we, the modern day humanity, existed. So according to the Maya tradition, there were two different humanities that came before us, but they were unsuccessful humanities, so they disappeared. And the names that we have to call those humanities, to call those people, are metaphors for how they behaved. We're going to ignore the first one. They were called the people of mud or the people of clay. It doesn't matter because we don't have enough time. You don't understand how long the story of Shivalva is, so we're not going to be able to cover it in 1.5 hours. I'm not going to get into details, but the people of mud, we're going to ignore them right now. All you need to know is they were kind of dumb. That was it. That's why they failed as a humanity. Not very intelligent, very soft, because they were made out of mud. That's the metaphor. Soft, not intelligent, whatever. They just failed as a humanity. The second humanity that came around is referred to as the people of wood. And the people of wood are very interesting to study, more relevant nowadays than ever before, because the people of wood were more successful and around for longer than the people of mud. And the reason for that is that the people of wood were very intelligent. They were very smart, okay? They had big brains, a lot of brain power. They were very logical, very scientific, very rational. But why do we call them the people of wood? Because that's a metaphor for they were too hard. Wood is hard, wood is inflexible. So their downfall or the problem of the society was that they had a lot of brains but no heart. They had no spirit. They were ungrateful. They had no empathy. They were just too hard and too inflexible, just like wood is. And so what happened is the Popol Vuh tells us they spread all over the world. They were very successful in that sense of humanity, but because they were ungrateful, because they had no empathy, they forgot to say thank you to their creators. And who are their creators? Who are our creators? The things that enable our creation. For example, the water enables our existence. Why? Because we would literally die without it. The air, as I mentioned before, enables our existence because we would literally die if the air went away, right? The sun, we would die without it, the moon, the bees, like everything would collapse if the bees would stop existing. So for the Maya, what is sacred is everything. Everything is sacred. Okay? We're supposed to be grateful to all of existence, and our role as human beings is to protect the symbiosis of existence because we're the only ones that are kind of not that important. Like, if we disappear, everything would be fine. But if the plants disappear, it wouldn't be fine. If the bees disappear, it wouldn't be fine. We're supposed to be the youngest of the generation. We're like the youngest sibling in the generation of the family that is everything, right? And so our role is supposed to be gratitude, literally, according to the Maya tradition, and the protection of the symbiotic processes of existence. Mm. The people of wood, they were kind of self-centered, okay? They only cared about themselves and they were very ungrateful and um they didn't like understand the importance of nature. They didn't understand the importance of symbiosis, and they started doing something that's gonna sound really familiar to all of us, actually, which is that they started to destroy everything. They were like, oh, let's just take down the trees for our own benefit. Let's just use the water as a resource for our own benefit. They basically started destroying the earth. Fun fact, this story is thousands of years old, okay? The Maya predicted what would happen if we acted like this thousands of years ago already. And so what happened is eventually the energies of creation had a meeting, and in that meeting they decided that it was time. So like the animals, the plants, the earth, everything in the earth got together and they were like, "Oh my God, the people of wood are destroying everything on the earth. What are we gonna do?" And everything in the earth decided to come against the people of wood because the earth was like, "Okay, they're destroying the earth anyways, and they're crazy because they're self-destructive. Because if they destroy everything, they're gonna kill themselves anyways." So the earth was like, we better kill them before they kill us. So the animals came and bit them. Their houses collapsed. There was like the water came and flooded them. Like everything in the earth came against them. And then they disappeared from this planet because the planet was trying to protect itself from them. Isn't it scary? It sounds familiar, right? It's kind of like what we're doing right now, but it's crazy that this story is literally thousands of years old, and the Maya predicted what happens when human beings lose empathy and we lose gratitude and we lose that sense of respect towards the earth and the other beings, because it's not just about us. So, anyways, who's Vukub Kakish? Vukub Kakish did not help the people of wood at all. He was this bird. And macaws are really colorful, right? And in the story, it is narrated that the bird, his eyes were made out of green gems, and his teeth were made out of green gems as well. So, like probably jade and stones that were really valuable to the ancient Maya. And so, what happened is Bukub was is a metaphor for everything that can sometimes be wrong with people, basically. So what happened is he's going around in the time of the people of wood, and he's like, "Look at me. I'm Vukub Kakish. Look, I'm so colorful." He's like, "Look at me. My eyes and my teeth are made out of gems." And then he starts saying crazy stuff like Ukushka, which means the heart of the sky. I'm bigger than the heart of the sky. I'm greater than the sky itself. I'm greater than the earth itself. I'm greater than all of you guys. You know, he's like, look at me. I'm amazing, people of wood. And look at my gems. Look at all of my value. Look at how colorful and loud and cocky I am. But because the people of wood were so disbalanced, they fell for his act, you know? They fell for his thing and they were like, yeah, let's be more like Vukub Kakish. So he became kind of like a leader to them, like a I don't even know how to how to explain it, but they loved him, you know? And so for the first time, we see Vukub Kakish mentioned as an energy of Shivalva, and he's a metaphor for what is wrong with human beings. And there's many aspects to him, but especially there's seven aspects to him. And it's like, is when human beings can develop things that are more connected to Shivalva, which is like being ungrateful, being envious, like being cocky or, too egocentric or whatever, being greedy, like he was greedy, like all the things that we can develop ourselves, like in ourselves as human beings that are not good traits, but the Maya are accepting that sometimes we can have some of those. Some people have more of those, some of us have less of those, but in a way, we all have sometimes traits that are not that great. And Vukub Kakish is the representation of what happens if we let that part of us take over, right? So what happens actually? So what happens is the next part of the story, which is when Hunahpu and Xbalamque come around. Who are Hunahpu and Xbalamque? They are the coolest, in my opinion, because there's a lot of great characters in the Maya tradition, but these guys, like, they know what's up, okay? Hunahpu are known in the Maya tradition as the hero twins. They're the teachers who teach us, and that's what we're going to be talking about now. They teach us how to overcome Shivalva, how to overcome our own darkness and the darkness around us. So the first time we see them being mentioned in the Popol Vuh is they're looking at this whole craziness going on with the people of Wood, and they're like, this is not great. The people of Wood are not acting great. Then they're looking at Vukub Kakish and they're like, oh, this is not great at all. They're like, here comes this stupid bird, and like the people of Wood are already so disbalanced, and now here comes the bird and he's confusing them even more and making them believe all of these negative things that you're only valuable if you have gems. Like your value is based on, like your material possessions, and that you're only valuable, like that one human being can be better than another, that one human being can be better than the sky itself and that the earth itself. And Hunach Balamker sitting there like, nope, no, we can't let this happen. We have to do something about the bird. Someone has to take care of the bird because this is not great, like the people of Wood are already so lost. We have to do something to bring them back to balance, and getting rid of the bird is step one. So they go and they trick Vukub Kakish. They talk to this elderly couple of dentists, okay? It's a weird story, I know, but it's actually a really cool story. So there's this elderly couple, a man and a woman, and they're dentists. And Hunahpu, who is an expert in the art of using the blowgun, comes up with this plan. And there's Vukov Kakish, there's this tree where he goes to eat fruit every day. And so Hunahpu hides behind the tree and like waits for the perfect moment and hits Vukub Kakish in the mouth and the beak actually with the blowgun. So Vukub Kakish falls and he's like, ow, ow, my beak, my teeth, my gem, valuable teeth. He's like, oh, it hurts, it hurts. Then come around the dentists, but it's all like actually a trick. And they're like, oh, bird, you look like you're in pain. Well, you're in luck. We're dentists. We can help you with your teeth. And he's like, oh, thank God. Okay, help me. Help me because I'm in so much pain. Right. And what they do is they secretly, like, as they're helping him, take out all the gems from his teeth and switch it for something that's very symbolic. They switch the gems for white corn. At this point, when the bird gets out of surgery or whatever. Like he's like, wait, what happened to all my gems? And Hunach Punch Balamke, the hero twins realize they don't even have to kill him anymore because they were planning to kill him at some point. That was on the table, the idea of just murdering him. Like they're like, we don't even have to kill him because he gets so depressed about the fact that he lost his gems that he literally starts to feel like now he's not valuable anymore. He loses all of his cockiness and he just spends the rest of his life crying and being like, oh, I'm a victim and like, oh my God, I lost my gems and now I'm worthless. Now I'm not greater than the heart of the sky, than the heart of the earth, than the earth itself, because I lost all my gems. So first metaphor, right? Then we fast forward in the Popol Vuh and we see two more stories that I'm going to share with you. And now we're actually going to get into how do we learn from those stories, yeah, to overcome our darkness. Okay. Well, maybe first I'll start it with one little thing, which is that um, I had a conversation with a spiritual leader once, and in two different conversations, same spiritual leader though. And it was absolutely beautiful. The first one was I met he was like, oh, Sulba, I'm gonna introduce you to a woman. You guys probably know this story already. And I was like, yeah, cool, introduce me to her. And he was like, oh, just be mindful about something important when you meet her. And I was like, okay, what is it? And he was like, well, she's in her Vukub Kakish. And I was like, what do you mean she's in her Vukub Kakish? I've never heard someone say that to me before. He's like, oh, she's like in Shivalva. She's not acting great all the time. Like she can be, you know, she can be difficult to deal with, but we have to have a lot of empathy for her, he told me, because she's in her Vukub Kakish. And I found that so beautiful because I felt like many other people would have referred to her as, oh, she's crazy. She's like, and I'll use a lot of bad words to describe her. And I found it so beautiful that this man is like, just be mindful because she's in her Vukub Kakish, so we have to have empathy for her. That just goes to show how aware the Maya communities are of this part of human nature. And instead of like attacking it or fighting or having this conflict between each other as human beings, we actually show empathy for one another. And then he said something that blew my mind even more. He said, well, of course, have empathy unless you might be in your Vukub Kakish too. I guess that will show because if you're in your Vukub Kakish too, then I'll have empathy for you too because you're gonna get triggered by her. And I was like, then I'll have to have empathy for both of you. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, this is such an interesting way to, introduce me to a person. And I thought, that's so beautiful because since that day I kept on thinking, he's right. If I meet someone who's in their Vukov Kakish and they're saying things that I disagree with, they're acting in ways that I disagree with, they're acting in ways that trigger something in me, maybe that just goes to show that I haven't fully healed my own Vukub Kakish, and I found that really beautiful. And the second thing the spiritual leader said to me in a totally different conversation was, I think I figured out what's wrong with what's wrong with the people of the modern Western world. And I was like, okay, please do enlighten me. What do you mean by that? And he said something that I found so profound. Mm, and he said, I think I figured it out. I think they have their duality backwards. And I was like, what do you mean they have their duality backwards? And he said, yeah, they're doing this crazy thing that makes no sense. And he was like, I wonder why no one taught them not to do that. And I was like, explain, please do elaborate because I'm not understanding what you're saying. And he explained it to me. And what he said was, it's like they put their duality side by side. It's like, here's your light. No, actually, here's your light and here's your darkness. And he said, it's like they take their own light and their own darkness and make them enemies, he said. They put the light to fight with the darkness and the darkness to fight with the light and the light to fight with the darkness and the darkness to fight with the light. He was like, that makes no sense. They're never gonna get anywhere like that. He said, what you have to do is this. Put it like this, he said. And I was like, what do you mean put it like this? And he was like, well, think about it. Look at nature, he said, for example. Go outside at night and look up at the stars. And he said, what's the only reason you can see the stars at night? And I was like, because it's dark. And he said, yeah, right, because of their dark background. He said, the darker the night, the bigger the light of the stars, the bigger they shine. You know what I mean? And he said, like, the darkness is not there to fight with the light. You don't see the darkness of the night fighting with the light of the stars and creating all this chaos. You see the duality of the darkness and the light, and you see them collaborating with each other. And he said, when you've had a difficult life, what do you do with your dark background? You don't put it to fight with your light, and you don't put your light to fight, with your darkness. He said, you just put the darkness in the background and let it be the thing that supports that your light shines even brighter. Because he said the people who go through the most Shivalva are the ones who have the opportunity to shine the brightest in the light. Because the darker the background, the bigger the light. So here comes the next part of the story, which is the story of the hero twins. What's so interesting about the hero twins? Let's study their names. Hun Achpu and Xib'alb'a. Hun means one, and Achpu is one of the 20 energies of the Cholkij, and Achpu is the one energy that represents the sun. And that's crazy because for us as human beings, like what's the biggest source of light on the earth for us is the sunlight, right? Like that's the biggest source of light. So all my life, I asked my dad, I was like, Daddy, I don't get it. Why is it that if Ahpu represents the sun, every time we talk about Ahpu, all we talk about is Shivalva? When we study Ahpu, shouldn't we be studying only the light? Isn't Ahpu the one that represents only the light? And he was telling me, no, my love. He was like, read about the story of Ahpu, he told me. Read about the story of Hunahpu. Hunahpu had to overcome all of the trials of the darkness. He went through every single level of darkness, and only at the end of the story, he elevated himself and he became the sun. And Xib'alb'a had to also go through every trial of the darkness. And at the end of the story, she elevated herself and she became the moon. Yeah. And so he said, if you want to truly understand the light, you have to first understand the darkness, he said. If you want to truly understand the light, you have to first understand the darkness. So when we study the biggest source of light, first we study the biggest source of darkness, because that's what Hunahpu actually went through. So it's a beautiful story because the first part of the story is not the hero twins, it's their parents. Actually, their parents went down to Shivalva as well. And in the story, it's like they're playing the Maya ball game. And the energies of Shivalva send some owls to call Hun Hunahpu and Vukub Hunahpu. Okay, this is the Maya family tree. So Hun Hunahpu and Vukub Hunahpu, they're the parents of Hunahpu and Xib'alb'a, the hero twins. The hero twins are the ones who teach us the lessons and how to overcome the light. But before they came around, we learned the story of their parents. Their parents actually failed in Shivalva. And I love that about the story in the book because they teach us through their parents what not to do, and through the next generation, the children, what to do. So what did they do? The parents. The parents were called down to Shivalva, and every trial in Shivalva is called the House of Shivalva. And there's many different houses. The house that is dark, the house of the glass shards, the house of the jaguars, the house of the bats, the house that is cold. Each house is a metaphor for the difficulties that we go through in life, and each house triggers a part of us. In order to overcome the trial, what we have to do is let go of the part of us. The trials in Shivalva seem external. The secret, the little key here, is they're not external, they're actually internal. Let me explain. So the first trial, let me just give you the first house in both the ones who failed and the ones who actually overcame the trial, right? The first trial is, well, the parents come in. Immediately they start failing, okay? They meet the lords of Shivalva. There's like this random bench, okay? And it's hot. It's like really warm. If you sit on this bench, you're gonna burn your butt, okay? And the lords of Shivalva are like, please, guests, take a seat. And these two people, they look at it and they see it super hot. It's like they know they're gonna get hurt by sitting there, but they don't want to be impolite. And they're like, well, if they say it's okay to sit there, then maybe we should sit there. So they sit there, and what happens? Obviously, they burn their butts, They're like, ow, you know? But immediately, this is not even the first trial, but immediately in Shivalva, we start seeing metaphors for the things that we're not supposed to do in life. Is like sometimes you surround yourself by someone who doesn't have your best interest at heart. And like, why do you go, and you actually follow what this person is telling you to do? You know what I'm saying? Like, we already start to see these metaphors for like things we're not supposed to do, right? In the opposite story, the hero twins, the children, when they get invited to sit on the bench that is hot, they're like, yeah, right, thank you, but no, thank you. That's my boundaries. And we start learning about boundaries. They're like, why would I do that? Like, we appreciate the offer, but that's going to hurt us. Why would we let you put us in a situation that's going to hurt us? Like, why would we sit on a bench that is hot, So I love it because we see the two examples side by side in the book of like, how one's failed and one's actually stood up, stood their ground, stood up for themselves, etc. Then the parents go into the first house, and the first trial is they have this tabaco cigar and this ocote. Again, you know me, I don't know how to say ocote in English. I'll never figure it out. I'm sorry, this happens all the time. If you want to help me in the chat, feel free to, but it's just like this piece of wood that it's used in Guatemala and it's very flammable and you can use it kind of as a torch, whatever. It's called fat wood, fire starter. I don't know. Something like that. Okay, so they are given ocote and they're given a cigar. The parents, right? In their trial, the lords of Shivalva come and tell them the following. They're like, your first trial is here's a lit cigar, here's a lit ocote. We're gonna come back to you in the morning. And if the cigar cannot consume itself and the ocote cannot consume itself. If they consume themselves, we're gonna murder you. And so, how could you keep a cigar lit? Like, think of a cigarette. If you've never seen a cigar, like you light a cigarette and you like don't turn it off, it will consume itself. And same with wood, right? Like, if you don't turn it off, it will consume itself. But they're like, it has to still be lit in the morning. You can't just turn it off. Like, it has to be lit and it has to be full. And the parents, it's crazy, right? Because the parents, what they do is they fail already in their first trial. What do? They sit there and they're like, this is impossible. They're like, how are we going to do this? And their reaction is to start freaking out. And their reaction is to basically just sit there and be victims of the situation and cry about it. They're like, this is impossible. We're gonna die. We're freaking out. Oh my God. And also, why are we even in this situation? This is so unfair for us. Like, why are we even here? La la la. The night goes by, the cigar consumes itself, the cote consumes itself. Lords of Shivalva come back next morning. They're like, you guys failed. They get murdered. Okay. And that's it. That's their end of their story. Years pass by and their children find themselves in the same trial. And already in the Popol Vuh, we start to see the metaphors for how, like, if our parents don't overcome stuff, we're gonna have to. Like, we already start seeing, like, metaphors for, like, ancestral trauma and, like, how from generation to generation in our families, like, stuff is passed on until someone actually overcomes it? And so, what happens in the next part of the story is the hero twins have the same trial. What do? They immediately start acting consciously and being astute. They are given the cigar, they're given the ocote, and they're like, okay. They're like, first things first, let's think clearly. This is a trick. Is it impossible to keep it lit all night? They will look at each other and agree, yes, it's impossible to keep it lit all night without it consuming itself. So, okay, before we figure it out, let's just turn the fire off so it stops consuming itself, and then we'll figure out a way to figure it out. They're like, let's just sit here and put our brains together and think. They're not playing victims, they're not freaking out. They're being practical, they're being astute, they're being conscious in the face of this difficult trial in their lives, yeah? So the next thing they do is they figure out sometimes we can't do it alone. So the next thing they figure out is we're going to ask for help. So they make an invocation and they invoke the fireflies, and then the fireflies come flying. And you know how fireflies, like, they look like fire. I mean, that's why they're called fireflies. So they put the firefly on, like, I have a random toothbrush here. They put the firefly, on top of the cigar, and it gives the optical illusion that the cigar is actually lit. And then they invoke a macaw of all animals, interestingly enough, now that you know the story of Vukub Kakish. and they invoke a macaw and they take some of the feathers. They ask the macaw to borrow them some of the of its feathers, the ones that are blue and yellow and green, and those are the colors of fire, and they tie it up to the ocote and it looks like it's lit. The morning comes, the lords of Shivalva come, you know, and they're shocked. They're like, "What? The cigar is still lit? The ocote is still lit?" And like it didn't consume itself. And they're like, "Yeah, we did it, you know?" And so they're like, we're being in a situation where we're being tricked. We're being put in an impossible situation that has no solution. They're like, we have to also be smart back, you know, we also have to be astute sometimes, you know, and be creative to get out of the situations. And so it's like we start to see the differences throughout the whole story, how the parents always like play victims. They always cry. They always, their first reaction is always to freak out. Their first reaction is to fall for the tricks immediately. You know what I mean? And then the children are like, okay, we're in the darkness. What's our mission? Getting out of the darkness, going back to the upper world. They're like, how are we going to do it? We're going to be smart. We're going to be astute. We're going to be conscious. It's really important to know that they fall sometimes. They fail sometimes. Even, and the Popol Vuh teaches us this, even Hunahpu and Xib'alb'a, who are the literal teachers of how to overcome the darkness and be a true warrior, fail sometimes. There's a part of the story where Hunahpu literally loses his head. Like he actually gets decapitated. And his sister Xib'alb'a has to grab the head and keep going through the trials all by herself, you know, while she figures out what to do with her brother who's like almost dead at this point. So it's like even the strongest of us, sometimes in the face of the darkness, can lose our minds, is a metaphor for that, you know? Like sometimes we actually can lose it and we can't be there. And even that's a metaphor for the importance of surrounding yourselves with great people who can actually hold you when you're losing your head, you know? Because like the sister comes around and helps him, and then eventually she figures out how to put the head back in, and then they keep going together, right? And so the entire story is a set of different metaphors for how do we overcome the darkness, right? So I'd love to tell you all of them, but then we'd have to be here for 5 hours, and we're not gonna do that today. Um, but what's my point? Like, why did I start this session by telling you, well, I needed to first explain to you, obviously, like the history and what Shivalva actually is, and like the educational, technical part of it, but now getting more practical into this topic of Shivalva. You and me and every single person sitting here and every single person in the world and in the planet can have one thing that is for certain. Okay? We've all gone through good stuff and we've all gone through bad stuff. That's one thing that's for certain. What's the other thing that's for certain? We're all gonna, in the future, we're all gonna go through good stuff. All of us are going to have good days. All of us are going to meet a new person who comes into our life and changes our life, maybe a friend, maybe a beautiful romantic partner. Some of you might, I don't know, start a family that's going to be beautiful, or some of you are going to, in a few years from now, you're going to think of a great business idea or a project idea, or you're going to find your passion in life and you're going to be super fulfilled with what you're doing. All of us are going to have great experiences in the future, but if we're being realistic, the opposite is also true. All of us are also going to have bad experiences in the future. We're all going to lose a person in the future. Some of us are going to be betrayed by someone who we trusted. Some of us are going to, I don't know, be in an accident and get hurt. You know, some of us are going to deal with illness. Some of us are going to go through pain. Some of us are going to be cheated on. I don't know. Like it's every single one of us is go through difficult and dark and negative stuff in the future as well, because duality is just a part of life. The biggest illusion that the West has sold to us is, or this modern day society, I feel like so many people have an issue with trying to feel like they're in control. The Maya tradition teaches us that we're not in control. We're not in control. We're vulnerable. Give me a strong, military trained, super muscular, guy who knows how to use guns and everything and is surrounded by 50 bodyguards and has $1 billion in their bank account. And even that guy is still vulnerable because he still could be in a car accident. His wife might still cheat on him. Like maybe a bullet will hurt him or he'll fall off the stairs. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like every single one of us, even if we're muscular, even if we're protected, even if we feel like we're all equally vulnerable. And that is an incredibly beautiful thing to accept that we're not actually in control, to surrender to the fact that we're not in control of the circumstances and the situations that life is going to put in front of us. We can try to control them, have fun, but here's a spoiler alert, you're not actually going to have fun trying to control them. Like you might want to, but it's not going to be fun and it's not going to be healthy for you. So, what's the only thing, guys? What's the only thing we're actually in control of? Tell me, what is it? It's us. We're in control of ourselves. We're in control of how are we going to respond to the situation in front of us. Are we going to react? Are we going to be triggered? Like, who has been faced here with both things in situations in their life? Like, maybe you're in the middle of a fight with, I don't know, your partner or something. And how many of us guilty, right? We've all done it, okay? Like, let's be honest, we're all human beings, okay? Like, how many of us sometimes have had a really bad reaction to something? And a reaction is to scream and to say something that I think is gonna really hurt you because you hurt me, so now I wanna hurt you back. You know what I mean? And to be like, you are blah, 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 blah. But you guys know that feeling right afterwards when you're like, oh my God, ah. It's like soul sucking, it's horrible. And maybe if you're lucky, you've also, I had that recently and I was like, damn, this is amazing. Like I was faced with a really difficult situation to face. I was so proud of myself. It was so amazing. Like I couldn't even deal with it. I was so happy even though something bad had happened because I took my time to think about it. I showed up in the situation with a level of emotional maturity. I even shocked myself at that point. I was like, whoa, everything that I've been doing is starting to work. I was like, wow. And it was crazy because something that started as a bad situation, thanks to my super positive response, and it could have gone a different way. I'm not saying if you do the right thing, only good things are going to happen. Still bad things are going to happen, right? But the way I responded to it, um, you know, actually turned the situation fully around in a way that's super unexpected and it brought something like a silver lining that was so huge that actually now I'm happy that happened because it turned the whole thing around and it improved the relationship I had with that person and it changed everything and it led to open communication and everything is better than ever now. You know what I mean? So I was like, oh, wow, this is what happens when you respond instead of when you react? And I was like, this is amazing, right? And so that's what we have control over. It took me a while to understand when spiritual leaders in Maya ceremonies tell you, now we're going to be grateful and we're going to say what we're grateful for. It's deeper than that, but just in summary, right? Like, and then everyone says everything they're grateful for that's positive. And then the spiritual leaders come to you and remind you, don't forget to say thank you also for everything that's bad in your life right now. And for years as a teenager and everything with my dad, I was like, why would I say thank you, for like all the negative stuff that's happening to me? Like, no, I'm not grateful for that. But a few spiritual leaders explained it to me in a way that's beautiful. And they explain the role of the darkness is one of the biggest, most sacred things that we should have the most gratitude for in our lives. Because, and a spiritual leader said this to me once, imagine you get sick. Let's be really grateful for illness, he told me. And I was like, that's a big thing to say, dude. Like, what do you mean, let's be grateful for illness? He was like, imagine, Xib'alb'a, imagine the role of illness in your life. Imagine you're ill and imagine you end up at the hospital. He said, what thing has more power in this entire world to make you appreciative of life, he said, to make you reconsider your life and what your goals are and what your priorities actually are than being ill and being afraid for your life. He was like, illness is the biggest gift. He was like, it makes you understand life. Nothing will make you understand the purpose and the meaning of life and the value of the people you love and the value of every day and the value of setting your priorities straight as hard as illness will. And then I was like, wow, because I have this story of a person, a family member who had an accident once. They fell and hit their head, and we went to the hospital, and there was a moment there when the doctors thought that he had internal bleeding in his brain, and they were kind of like, you might not make it. That was horrible. And I'll never forget this person, this family member. They sat there, and I looked at them, and this profound sense of regret. And then they looked at me and they told me, I am so, he was like, I can't believe it. And I was like, what? He was like, what was the point? And I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, why did I stress every day? I was so stressed every day. Like, what was I even stressed about? He was like, I was complaining every day. He was like, what was I complaining about? He was like, that was so dumb. He was like, I can't believe it. I wasted my entire life stressing and complaining and being afraid of taking a leap and actually doing something that's meaningful for me, instead just staying in my comfort zone, installing and thinking I have time to finally step up, and one day I'll be happy, he said. Like one day I'll start taking care of my mental health. One day I'll start working on my goals. And he was like, now the one day just went away. He was like, I might die. And the one day never came, and I didn't do it. And instead, I just sat there and was stressed and complained and didn't do it. And Shivalva is about tough love, so I'm going to give you guys tough love now. I had a conversation with a friend the other day, and I'm sorry, okay? But this is how I view it. And this is how the Maya viewed it, okay? Oh, well, before I'll finish this quick story. So he was like, I promise, I swear, if I get healthy again, I'll come back and change my life. And you know what's the craziest part about it? He did not die. And for like a week, he was positive and everything. And then he immediately went back into complaining and being stressed and never did. That was years ago. He's still doing it. You know what I'm saying? So so it's like this moments, the darkness shows us these moments of awakening, but what Shivalva teaches us is you're going to be punched and you're going to be forced to see this lesson. You learn it, or if you don't learn it, you don't come out of Shivalva. Next time you're going to be punched even harder. That's what the Maya teaches. You see it, you're like, I have to change, but you still don't change, you still don't work on it. You're going to be punched even harder next time. Stop complaining about being punched. You're exactly where you want to be. Let me tell you that. Because we're all perfectly capable of change and development. I'll tell you two little stories, and it's everybody knows this one. I have to share it right now. You know it. Well, I had a really difficult life. It was not fun, okay? It was really not, it was dark, okay? It was a lot of Shivalva. I went through a lot of stuff. And my dad was really worried about me at some point. Um, that was like, wow, that was like 6, 7 years ago, actually. And he has a really great friend, my dad, who's this genius, like coach, and like he does therapy, but like alternative, whatever. And he understands Mayan wisdom, and he understands Buddhism, and he's really cool. He's a really cool guy. Anyways, he sends me to this guy. And he's like, I'm worried about you. You're definitely not okay. I sit in his office, and for 45 minutes straight, he's like, okay, why are you here? And so for 45 minutes straight, I'm like, I'm here because my life is horrible. I'm in an abusive relationship, and it was really bad, okay? It was really horrible. I'm like, I literally have no money. I literally don't have money to eat food, like the basic survival stuff. Like I can't, you know. I'm like, I have this problem with this family member. I have this trauma from my childhood. I have this thing going on. I have that thing going on. And I'm not knowing how to deal with it. So I'm going out and partying and smoking and drinking a lot. And it's not great. But I can't stop it. And I told him like, and then this person is hurting me. And then that bad thing happened. And this bad thing happened. And this bad thing happened. For 45 minutes, he just sat there and listened to me. And and when I was done talking and crying and telling him about all the dark and big problems of my life, he just looks at me and he goes, "Okay, so can I ask you a question?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he says, "What are you going to do about it?" And guys, I am like, "What do you mean, what am I going to do about it?" I got so triggered. You don't understand how triggered I got. I was like, "You obviously have not listened to me for the last 45 minutes. Didn't you hear me? I'm in an abusive relationship. I have no money. I think I have a drinking problem. Like, I don't like this person hurt me. That thing happened. Like, didn't you just process everything I told you?" And he was like, "No, no, I heard you. And I'm asking you, what are you going to do about it?" And I was like, starting to come up with excuse after excuse. I was like, well, I don't know what to do about it because I'm afraid to leave my relationship. And honestly, like, it's really bad, the relationship thing. And he was like, right, you told me you're in this really bad relationship. What are you going to do about that? And I was like, well, it's hard because I don't have money, And like, what about, like, the thing is, like, I don't know where to go and this and that. And he's like, right, you don't have money. He's like, what are you going to do about that? And I was like, how dare you, sir, suggest that my own life might be my own responsibility? How dare you, horrible man, tell me that? And so he looks at me and he tells me the words that definitely changed my life. He was like, Sulvai, look at me. He was like, I feel empathy for you because the things that you have gone through are definitely not your fault. Legitimately, they're actually not your fault, he told me. Like, you didn't do anything to deserve that. You were actually trying your best with the tools that you had at the time. Like, the things you've gone through are not your fault, but they are your responsibility. He was like, do not come back into my office, he said, if you're not going to take responsibility. He was like, because then we're just wasting our time. He was like, if you're going to wait for your family, for your boyfriend to change, for money to fly from the sky, for this and that to happen, he was like, have fun waiting, girl, because you're going to have a really sad, long, depressing life. And I was like, oh my God, okay, tough love. And he was like, the only one who can do something about it is you. Take responsibility. I stepped out of his office that day and I was like, I hate him because he's right. And I was like, he's right. I was like, I have to do something about it. And over the next few years, I left the relationship. I started working in things that I'm passionate about. I sat down and started healing myself. I changed my life completely. And yeah, there were ups and downs. Like I ran into other bad people in the future, but back into old patterns. But the Maya say it's like a spiral. Like learning is a spiral. Sometimes you come out of something and fall right back into it? But then I was like, no, okay, I did it again. So I'm like, let me leave this relationship or situation again. And now I'm super happy. Like I'm still gonna have bad things happen to me in my life, obviously, yeah, and you too, but also they're less bad, because of everything that I did. So the way I want to end this session is with a little bit of tough love, and then I'm going to tell you how we can keep talking about Shivalva after this. But basically, um, I was talking to my friend the other day, mm, one of my best friends, and for the first time, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be honest with you, girl, because she called me and she was crying, and she's been in this situation in her life for years at this point, where she's not very healthy because she's very out of shape, and like she has physical consequences for that reason. She's kind of in debt and broke and spent a lot, but she also spent the last 10 years doing nothing about it, you know what I mean? And like now she has this great opportunity to start a new project that she's passionate about, that she loves, that's going to bring her abundance so that she can finally get out of her debt and everything. And she's amazing at it. And I'm like, I'll help you. Like, let's do it. Like, let's do it. I'll help you, you know? And, she's surrounded by friends that are not so great. Uh, she never is able to find great relationships, but keeps looking for the same kinds of guys. And I've heard the same story a million times already for I don't know how many years because we've been friends for like 15 years or something at this point. Mm. And she's just sitting there. And there's a lot more stuff going on, right? There's a lot of different difficulties going on in her life. And now she has severe anxiety. She's a little depressed. It's not going great, okay? It's not going great. And I'm always listening to her and telling her, hey, I love you. Come here. I have some ideas for solutions. Come on, let's work on it. Be brave and everything. And then the other day she called me crying and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna give it to you straight, girl. I was like, stop crying and complaining. I was like, why are you so afraid of success? Because this woman is afraid of success. And I told her, I don't judge you. I was too. In many ways, I still am, you know? I've found myself in the situation in life where I have in front of me the opportunity to jump into a better life, and I don't do it for years sometimes. You understand? Like for months or years, I'm like, oh, the opportunity to have a good life. I'm like, no, that's the worst, scariest thing I could face. Sometimes when you've been so long in the darkness, when you're in a dark room for a long time and then you finally see the light, the first thing that happens is you're like, "Ah," it hurts your eyes, you know what I mean? And so I'm like, I've personally, like, I've been really afraid of good things because every time everything starts going good in my life, I start getting very suspicious. I'm just like waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm like, it hurts less to fall from low than it hurts to fall from high. So let me stay low. Let me not take good things because if I actually take this leap of faith and take this risk, of going for love, true, authentic love, and beautiful things, and all those beautiful, amazing things in my life. What if it turns out it wasn't true love? And then it's actually going to hurt even more than this bad love that I already know is bad, but at least I know it's bad, so I'm prepared, So I already know that. We're all traumatized a little, so maybe some of you might understand it. So, you know what I'm saying? And so it's like, El que no arriesga no gana, we say in Latin America. The one who doesn't take the risk can never win, And so I was telling her, I'm not judging you because I've also gone through this fear of success. And by success, I don't mean necessarily just financially. I mean in every area of life, like just enjoy, love, goals, fulfillment, relationships, everything. And I know why. Like if I analyze my life backwards, I understand why I have that problem. But I told her, I'm gonna tell you what a friend told me the other day. Because like some time ago, I was complaining about a situation, and my friend was like, well, he was like, you knew this was gonna happen, and you still chose to get into the situation. I was like, yes, actually, you're right, And he was like, then don't complain. He was like, your choice, your fault. Bye. And he hung up on me, and I was like, okay. I was like, okay. But it made me reflect because actually he was right. I was like, what did I expect? Like, obviously, it was gonna have a bad outcome. And so I just told her the same thing. I was like, look, girl, I was like, think about 1 year in the future. In 1 year in the future, if right now you come to Guatemala, because she's living abroad and whatever, you start this business that is not just a business, girl, you're super good at it, you're passionate about it. She's excellent at it, and all the doors and opportunities are opening for her in ways that are wild, okay? It's like the universe wants her to do it so much, it's just serving it to her on like a golden platter almost, And she's like, but I'm afraid of taking the step and blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, come to Guatemala. Let's start. I will help you. Let's do it together. I'm like, you have me, you have your family, you have friends who love you. I'm like, do you know how lucky you are? Because not a lot of people have that, you know? And I told her, we're gonna support you. I'm like, start working out. If you don't like how you look, start working, like just start eating well and working out. I'm like, just start doing that. Start taking better care of yourself. Start taking care of your mental health. Start doing this and doing that and doing this. And all of the difficult conversations and situations that you're afraid of having, just have them. There's people in your life who you obviously are not good for you. So cut those relationships away and start building better relationships with better people who actually love you and have your best interest at heart, who are going to be actually happy to see you succeed, because she has those kinds of friends that don't want their friends to succeed. You know what I mean? Those kinds of people who are like want to bring you down with them, you know? I'm like, girl, why? Like, why are you having those kinds of friends? I'm like, find good friends, you know, who actually will be your cheerleaders and support you and be there for you. And when you make it, we're gonna be the first ones to throw you a party because we're happy for you, you know? And so I told her, like, do that, work on that for a year or work on that for 2 years. And there's two paths here, I told her. In 2 years, you're gonna be sitting in your beautiful house, you'll have paid your debt, you'll be in shape, you'll be surrounded by good people, you'll have a really beautiful life, you know? And or I told her, keep doing what you're doing and then see you in a year for another phone call where you're crying about how bad your life is. But if in 1 year you call me crying, I'm so sorry. It's your fault. You're choosing to be there. Like, I'm super sorry to break it to you, but it's your fault. It's your choice. You're exactly where you want to be. Of course, there are some situations in life that are more complicated than others. Believe me, I know. I've been through some of them. Some are easier to get out of, some are harder to get out of. Some things that take less time to overcome and change and work on. Some things are way harder to face and work on, but nonetheless, as small, as medium-sized, or as big as it might be, what are you going to do about it? Because I might be like, okay, some problems you have to run a marathon to overcome them, and some problems you have to run the equivalent of 10 marathons to overcome them. My advice for you is if it's 10 marathons, you better start running now, you know, instead of being like, oh no, that's harder, just start running now. Some people have it easier, some people have it worse, you know. Like I've had it much easier than others. I've had it much harder than others. That's true for you and for me and for everyone else. But I think what's so powerful about the story of Shivalva is that it teaches us how to actually get out of our comfort zone, how to stop playing the victim, how to become conscious, how to create tools and techniques that are actually going to help us to face the darkness, to be astute, to overcome the darkness, and to also do the other thing, which, as ridiculous as it might sound to some people, is to actually accept the light, which, as I told you, for some of us, that's actually hard, as crazy as it may sound, because you might be like, what do you mean? It's hard to accept good things. If that's not the case for you, I'm so happy for you. This is a hard one to work on, okay? Then you're so blessed and I'm so happy for you. If you already made it out of Shivalva, I'm also so happy for you. And then give the rest of us some advice too of how you did it, because there's so much power in community too, you know, and we can learn from one another. But if we're still in it, it doesn't matter at what stage of it we're in. I think the first step, and I love this about the Maya tradition, is kind of like to accept that we're in it. I think one of the houses of Shivalva is even accepting that we're in Shivalva, in a sense, you know? One of the trials of Shivalva is just being honest about where we're actually at in life and asking ourselves the big questions like, how am I doing really? Am I actually okay? Imagine today I told you you're sick and you have a hemorrhage in your brain and you might die. And then from that perspective, like I told you the story of that family member, think about that. Then ask yourself that question. How am I doing really? Are my priorities straight? And then be brave, and then be strong, and then be astute. One of the things that helped me the most, and I had this conversation with a person recently, is the sooner we accept that life is not always fair, the sooner we're going to start living a good life. We can't just sit here and wait for life to be fair because it's not going to be. And I think at this point, we all kind of are. Maybe either we already kind of figured that one out or we're about to, because it's like, ah, why? You know, why do sometimes these things keep happening? But anyways, I'm gonna close it up there because you know me, I get too excited. That being said, though, this year I'm trying to like for the second half of the year, I'm trying to turn this into like the topic we talk about because it's such an important topic and you guys have asked so much that we elaborate. I know that for those of you who are new here, this was probably like super like, wow, there's so much new information. I know that for those of you who've been with me through the challenge or everything, you've already heard the stories, but you know there's not enough time in 1 hour or in 1.5 hours to actually get deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's really frustrating for me because I have all this information on Shivalva that I have never shared at the Man Wisdom Project. So a few months ago, I was like, that's it, I'm done. And I was talking to Eline and I was talking to the team and I was like, I want to do a new offering here so we can actually explore Shivalva together. So for the first time ever, we're going to open the doors to the 5-day light and dark challenge. It starts on the 20th of August, so it's less than 20 days away. And Martin, maybe if you want, you can share the slide. So if you want to stay and you're interested in continuing to learn about Shivalva, because again, guys, I would love to do this for 5 hours, but we can't. I don't think that would work, you know? It's like, yeah. So, well, I just wanted before I present you the 5-day light and dark challenge to just honor my dad a little bit by finishing with one of his quotes, and I think is really relevant for what we talked about. His quote is, "The spirituality of today has a name, and that name is action." And I think that's really relevant for what we talked about today because that's what that incredible teacher told me to do once. Take action. What are you actually going to do about it? Thinking about it, even knowing what you should do about it, but not doing it, is not going to change things. You actually have to take action. My dad always said that word to me every day. He was like, Sulva, remember action, 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 take action. So I'm telling you today, take action. So now you can go to the next one. So yeah, I came up with this idea a few months ago. It's called the 5-day light and dark challenge. And I'm gonna just present it to you a little bit what it is. So you can go to the next slide, Martin. Okay, so what we're gonna do is 5 days of transformative live and virtual lessons for 90 minutes each. So we're actually gonna have 1.5 hours every day for 5 days to talk about this topic. But this time, guys, I'm finally getting into it really, like for real. We're gonna deep dive into the darkness. We're gonna deep dive into the light. We're gonna actually gonna come up with not only like the historical information and everything, like everything you guys already know, of course, we're going to discuss it. We're going to have the opportunity to discuss it more in depth, like all of those stories. We're actually going to study them and everything, but it's going to be super practical too. I'm going to give you techniques that I've learned from my dad, that I've learned from spiritual leaders on how to actually overcome every single one of these things and get out of the dark, embrace the light. So you can go ahead. Okay, so you'll also receive is live, but we understand that whenever we do something live, you guys always ask us for access to recordings just in case you miss a day. So we're also going to include access to the recording. So if you missed a day or you just want to catch up because you can't make it live, or if you want to watch it 3 times to process all the information, you're actually going to have access to the recording. So yeah. Um, so yeah, it's the 5 live days and the access to the recordings. Then you'll also receive, as I said, practical exercises. For me, what was really important is when we've talked about Shivalva during the challenge or during like live events or during many occasions, like I've been sharing with you guys the stories in the Popol Vuh and different little snippets of information on the topic here and there. But what I want to do is knowledge, but also wisdom. And those of you who've been with us for a long time know the difference between that. Knowledge is just knowing the concept, understanding the concept, studying the concept, like, knowing all the stories, listening to all the stories. But wisdom in the Maya tradition is the ability to take the knowledge that you have and transform it into wisdom by taking action and actually applying it into your life. So we're going to give you that. We're going to give you a bunch of exercises that are super deep and like, oh my goodness, you have no idea. I'm so excited to give them to you. Um, and also so proud because it's like some of them are from my dad too, and that's always really special for me because some of them have been shared before, but most of them have not been shared before. So I'm excited to share that with you. Mm, so it's the live days, 5 days, 90 minutes every day, access to the recordings, and then the practical applications, so actual exercises and practices. You'll also receive lifetime access. So with previous challenges like the 20-day challenge, sometimes the access is just like available for 2 months or everything. But I feel like this topic is so profound and it opens up so many doors. I don't want you guys to have to do it in a rush or something. So you're gonna receive lifetime access to the recordings of this. Like you'll always forever have access to this. And if we ever decide to add some extra bonus content or something like updates in the future, you'll also be able to receive them and also lifetime support. Like, you guys know Eline, you guys know Anne. They're incredible customer service people and they're very special because they're not just customer service. Eline is my niece. She grew up in the Maya tradition, so she can answer Maya questions. It's really a family business, actually. My Anne is my cousin, if you guys didn't know that. So it's a whole family and they're amazing. So yeah, so you can move on to the next one. Okay. So the live calls, the recordings, the practical application, the lifetime access, and the lifetime support is what it includes. And just a few extra bonuses. We're also going to make sure that everything that you receive is also downloadable for different kinds of learners, because a lot of this is like by listening to me speak, but we also want you guys to have like actual written information as well. We're also going to create some cool glossaries and everything so that like all the difficult Maya words, like you can actually get through the concepts and start to study them and understand them to make it easier for you. So you're going to have downloadable PDFs. You're going to have access to community, to our private community. So everyone else who's going through the challenge, you're going to have a premium section of the community that's for you guys only, so that if you guys want to chit chat with each other, discuss how you're doing with the exercises, share your stories with each other, we find community really important. And also, as I mentioned, wisdom that's never been shared before. And that's what makes this so exciting for me, that it's completely new information and we're opening up a lot of things to you. So, yeah, it's 5 days of transformative live and virtual lessons, practical application, lifetime access and support, downloadable PDFs, access to the community, and access to completely new wisdom. I've been making a really big effort. We wanted to make it as accessible as possible, so it's $133. And that's it, right? That's the last slide, I think. Oh no, there's a 90-day money back guarantee too, So we always offer that with everything that we share because we work really hard to make everything that we do really special and we want you guys to feel safe. We want you guys to know that like, you're not gonna come in and you're gonna be like, oh, I'm really disappointed. This is not what I expected. So we want you to have that safety that you guys know that, oops, and I just saw a mistake in that slide, but whatever, Martin, you can close it up now. Um, but yes, there's a 90-day money back guarantee. So that's it. It starts on August 20th. It's going to be 5 days with me. And I hope some of you guys will join. I'm really excited. And I really also hope that you guys enjoyed the session that we had today, that you learned something new about the Maya tradition, about Shivalva. I really hope that some of the stories that I shared were able to help you. And I'm sure Martin just posted the link to join the 5 day challenge right now. But if he didn't, we're going to send it to you guys via email later today. And also, we're going to send you access to this recording. So, like, if you want to rewatch it or if you missed part of today's session or something, we also recorded it so that you guys don't have to miss out on anything. And okay, I guess I'll just leave you with try to find, no, don't try, do it. Find the center between the darkness and the light. Find the center between your own duality. If you're experiencing your own version of what's your Vukub Kakish, then just face it, start working on it. It takes time, but it's super worth it. And whatever it is you're going through in your life, let me just ask you one question. What are you gonna do about it? So I hopefully will see you guys on August 20th. And for now, I send you kisses and hugs and have an awesome rest of your day. I love you guys. Thank you. Bye bye. It's so nice to see you. Bye.